guys, welcome to the Wonderfully Complex podcast. I'm Heather.
And I'm Misty.
And we are just two women that are studying the Word together and learning what that looks like to apply to our everyday life and having fun along the way. So come on and join us.
Okay, let's get at it.
All right. Hey guys, welcome to chapter 11 of 1 Corinthians. So we're going to jump right in. Verse 1 is ending with what we just discussed in chapter 10, but follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. This is on the covering of the head in worship. Verse 2, I praise you for remembering me in everything and for holding the traditions, just as I passed them on to you. But I want you to realize that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is man, and the head of Christ is God. Everything man who prays is or prophesies with his head covered dishonors his head. But every woman who prays or prophesies with her head covering dishonors her head. It is the same having her head shaved. For if a woman does not cover her head, she might as well have her hair cut off. But it is disgrace for a woman to have her hair cut off or her head shaved. Then she should cover her head.
Mm-hmm.
So basically telling the woman in the culture of that time that if you want to be heard for the focus of sharing the gospel, then you need to honor what is going on in that culture.
Right. Like you need to be dressing modestly and not drawing attention to yourself.
Yeah.
And not distracting others from worshiping.
Yeah, because in that time, in that culture, having your hair showing was a distraction, and it was more of a sexual thing to be out in public with that. And
right. It was very considered sexually promiscuous almost to like have your long hair showing.
Yeah, so in that culture, if you're trying to share the gospel, but you're portraying yourself sexually, that's very conflicting and very distracting. And so you're not really going to get the gospel across if you're...
Right. So our culture would be a little bit different than that, but at the same time, we have things that we know, like if we dress certain ways, that would not more revealing or just different ways. And so when we're...
Yeah, so it's not our head coverings now in our culture now that we live out day to day, but...
Right. Yeah, but having said that, I grew up in a culture that did still use the head coverings. And a lot of my Amish friends, if I were to go visit them again, I would definitely, out of respect of their culture and what they believe, I would wear a head covering again when I went down there. Just a handkerchief or something like that, because they saw that as completely acceptable. I didn't have to go the full, Amish bonnet or whatever, but
yeah.
And there was more apostolic type people down there that I also grew up around and wore head coverings in my family for multiple years. And it's not a bad thing. I'm not against that culture at all anymore. A lot of people are dead set against it. But those women, if they're convicted to do that, I think it goes back to the believers who are convicted of not wearing meat. Although we've done that in our culture.
Oh my gosh.
Really weird. But no, not eating meat. It's like, and if they're convicted of that, then you don't need to argue with them. Let them live out their convictions with that. And with the head coverings, it would be the same thing. I'm not going to argue about what they're doing with that.
And you're being like what Paul was in those other verses where he in chapters 9, I think, where it was that he was meeting them where they're at, and so you're being a part of the culture and help. So anything that as you're building those relationships, with planting the seeds of the gospel, they're able to hear it.
So much in common that we have. It's really silly to nitpick over things like that. Yeah. And the other thing with this here, I really like, it's talking about the head of the man or the head of the woman.
Not literal
or the head of Christ. No, it's not literal head. It's it'd be the source or the authority of that person.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just think that's so great because, a lot of women especially will see this and see that this is saying that a woman is less than. But it's not. I mean, God has elevated us. talking about with man being right under God, has elevated us to be sitting right beside Christ in the throne room. Like
Mhm.
we have that positioning, and that's where men are. Like, and a woman is not less than because we get to honor our husbands.
Mhm.
And cause them to be honored, for their glory. Like a man with a good wife looks good.
Mhm.
And that's a compliment to us. That's not meaning that we're less than. And if you've got a really good, believing husband, why wouldn't you want to honor him and make him look good?
Exactly that. Yes.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
he's going to be doing the same for you because he loves you and he's giving himself for your benefit, like we've talked about before. It's just like that's how a marriage works.
Mhm.
And it's so good. And we're
Yeah.
both under God.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. A man should not wear anything on his head and when worshiping, for man is made in God's image and reflects God's glory. A woman reflects man's glory, for the first man didn't come from woman, but the first woman came from man. And man was not made for woman, but woman was made for man. For this reason, and because the angels are watching, a woman should wear a covering on her head to show she is under authority. But among the Lord's people, women are not independent of men, and men are not independent of women. For although the first woman came from man, every other man was born from woman, and everything comes from God. Judge for yourselves. Is it right for a woman to pray to God in public without covering her head? Isn't it obvious that it's disgraceful for a man to have long hair? And isn't long hair a woman's pride and joy? For it has been given to her as a covering. But if anyone wants to argue about this, I simply say that we have no other custom than this, and neither do God's other churches.
Mhm. So I think you had already talked about it a little bit about man and woman and marriage and how that's designed,
Mm-hmm.
but it talks again like uh, for man did not come from woman, but woman from man. Like God designed it that way. That God
Mm-hmm.
first created man, and then I think it's in Genesis 2 where if man should not be left alone, that he wanted
Mm-hmm.
to create a woman, and so he created us from man, and so man does need us. So
Yeah.
we are not where it says, where does it say, the Lord, nevertheless the Lord, woman is not independent of man and man is not independent of man, so we need one another. So it's not to be for us to have so much pride or ego, or for women to feel less than that. um, God designed it. God designed
Mm-hmm.
us intricately for different roles, and in that order, for his plan and for his purpose. And
Yeah.
um, he had intentionality for that. And when we are submissive to that, both man and woman, it's just such a beautiful thing that overflows from that.
Mm-hmm.
And when we support each other in those roles, and we help each other shine in those roles, it is really healthy and beautiful, and amazing things can happen from that.
Yeah.
Uh, and then it talks about, um, even though the first woman was created from man, and even more how we're not independent from each other, that woman was also, or man was also born from woman. So all of that, though, to be said, like
Yeah.
if to fight over the details of man, woman, who's first, but God created it all and he designed
Right.
it all
Right.
for a purpose. And so
Right. Yeah. And we have an order. I mean, God created everything with order. And when we go with that order, things have harmony and there's peace. When
mm-hmm,
we go against that order and we're constantly fighting against the way that God set things up,
chaos and destruction and
mm-hmm. Yeah.
things that we've talked about already.
Right.
Yeah. And so he's talking about, judge for yourselves, should a woman really have her head covered? And then he talks about the man and
Mm-hmm.
his long hair. And at that time, that
Yeah.
was not culturally appropriate.
No, because if a man at that time, I'm not talking just like the semi, like to the shoulder or whatever, because you would have like a yearly, if you were poor, like a yearly haircut, or even more often if you had the resources.
Mm-hmm.
But they did not have long hair unless they were working in the temple in cross dressing. And and then they would be more along the lines of like a male prostitute for the temple.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would have been very confusing if a man was trying to look like that and going to a worship service for with the Christians for God, because that's what they did in the pagan rituals that
Right.
included all of the sexual immorality and stuff that went along with that.
Yeah. So if you, as a Christian and as a male at that time, were you wanting to be confusing
Mm-hmm.
and to those believers or those that you're trying to share the gospel with looking like
Like a woman.
yeah,
Yeah.
that would be
Yeah.
conflicting. And so you're, again, like the woman and her head dressing, if your intentions are pure and selfless, you're going to want to honor what the culture is,
Right.
still honoring Christ and all of that. Like
Right.
some things in our culture are not aligned with Christ, and
Right. Yeah. And we're in the culture, but we're not of the culture. We're not letting that penetrate us. Like, we're with the people and we're around the people, and we will be involved in some of the things that might be around people who aren't honoring God, but our lives should honor God, and we should reflect God in the things that we're doing to the people around us.
yeah. So in that time, if his hair was to be long, that would have been, even though he wasn't of the world,
Right.
he would have been acting like the world, and that would have been
Right.
conflicting and confusing.
Right. Right. So, like, the least of it would have been he's actually causing confusion and distracting people from God, which is a big deal. The worst of it, he could have been dabbling in still living in his old lifestyle, which would have been with the temple prostitution and cross-dressing and all that.
Yeah. So Paul's just saying, judge for yourselves. Is this right for either these the man or woman to be doing these things? But if the woman's hair is her glory, then her hair is given her as a covering. So it's a focus of women were meant to have the long hair, not the men. And then at the end, we're 16. If anyone wants to not agree with what I'm advising you, then you guys need to figure out a better solution. Like, figure it out peacefully. Go figure it out.
Yep. Yeah, and then also the last verse there, it also implies that he may have been thinking that this might have been like passed on to other churches too. It's like neither do all of the other churches.
Yeah. So he's like, just cover all our bases here.
Right.
So peacefully figure it out if you don't want to take my advice. All right. Okay. So 17, correcting an abuse of the Lord's Supper. So we just talked about how Paul he's like, I praise you for holding some of these traditions and working on some of these things. But with 17, in the following directives, I have no praise for you. He's like, you've messed up big time with this. So all of these other things he's talked about, I'm lovingly correcting you. And he's still lovingly correcting, but he's like, there's nothing about this that you're doing right. You're doing this completely wrong. So 17, for your meetings do more harm than good. So when you're coming together for the Lord's Supper. In the first place, I hear that when you come together as a church, there are divisions among you. And to some extent, I believe it. No doubt there are to be differences among you to show which of you have God's approval. So then, when you come together, it is not for the Lord's Supper you eat. For when you're eating, some of you go ahead and on your own private suppers. As a result, one person remains hungry and another gets drunk. Page Turner. Don't you have homes to eat and drink in? Or do you despise the church of God by humiliating those who have nothing? What shall I say to you? Shall I praise you? Certainly not in this manner. For I received from the Lord what I also pass on to you. The Lord Jesus, on the night that he was betrayed, took bread, and when he was given thanks, he broke it and said, "This is my body, for which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, after supper, he took this cup, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this whenever you drink of it, in remembrance of me. For whenever you eat this bread and drink this cup, you will proclaim the Lord's death until he comes."
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah. I think if you're not familiar with the Lord's Supper, we should really just touch base on explaining what that is then. And
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so this would be considered the Lord's Supper. Sometimes it's called communion. If you're Catholic, it would be the Eucharist.
mm-hmm.
Back in these days, it was considered an agape fest or a love fest or feast. Yes, love feast. And they would get together normally with a big meal, but it always included the blessing and passing of the cup.
Mm-hmm.
And they would have a loaf, like one loaf of bread, which symbolized the body of Christ, and they would break off pieces of that loaf to go along with it. And like you had read in verse 24 and 25, is that when they drank, when they broke the bread, it was to symbolize the body that was broke for us. And so with the one loaf, they were symbolizing Jesus's body, and the fact that they were united in that one body by pulling off of the one loaf. And then the same with the cup. It was his blood that was shed for us with the sacrifice. And so this was a big deal. Not only it was a sacrament, so it was as big a deal as the baptism or marriage or anything like that. This is where the church communes or comes together with Christ. So it was a big spiritually impactful and actually connecting spiritually with God as the church as a whole. This is where the big things happened.
Yeah.
Like a lot of, I mean, when the church got together in this way, there was miracles, there was healings, there was all kinds of stuff happening,
Mm-hmm.
but they were not doing it because of the right
greed and
reasons.
gluttony and
Right. And
all
that's
the
what
other things.
all these things here are, just greed and gluttony. And they were not seeing, like, there was a big social divide between the rich and the poor. So there was,
that's where he's talking about some were hungry. And
yeah. And so you look back in Acts 2 where they were, they were coming together and devoting each other to, they were all devoting each other to the church, to each other. They were selling the things that they had to fulfill the needs of the other people in the church. Nobody wanted anything. Nobody needed anything. Everybody had everything in common, which meant that they didn't even see the stuff that they owned as being theirs, because they were so willing to freely give to anybody.
They were so connected as one body to,
right.
This is not mine. I'm here to serve.
Right. And so when they would go into communion, it was that body, that oneness, that that one church, the ecclesia, the gathering of God's body in one place, would then do the Lord's Supper, and to commune with God, to connect with God.
The Lord's Supper is to remember specifically the mourning of him dying, but then also the joy and worship, the joy of him defeating death. And
right. And that's why they would get together. It was a celebration of him, what he had done for us, and then rising again from the dead. And so they were, by not including them, by not valuing everyone in the church, and by being selfish and gluttonous with the food and the drink that they had, they were eating a ton and they were getting drunk on the wine. They were cheapening everything that was supposed to be done here. Something I read in my when I was doing my study is that basically, which I think probably after we finish up this chapter, but covers it more, but it was saying basically you taking this time together in this way is basically saying you were acting as if one of those people that crucified Jesus. Yeah, like you're hurting Christ. Yeah. The way you're treating this, Paul is saying you're basically being like one of the people. Yeah. So let's continue on to 27. Okay, yes. So anyone who eats this bread or drinks this cup of the Lord unworthily is guilty of sinning against the body and blood of the Lord. That is why you should examine yourselves before eating the bread and drinking the cup. For if you eat the bread or drink the cup without honoring the body of Christ, you are eating and drinking God's judgment upon yourself. That is why many of you are weak and sick, and some of you have even died. But if we would examine ourselves, we would not be judged by God in this way. Yet when we are judged by the Lord, we are being disciplined, so that we will not be condemned along with the world. So, my dear brothers and sisters, when you gather for the Lord's Supper, wait for each other. If you are really hungry, eat at home so you won't bring judgment upon yourselves when you meet together. I'll give you instructions about the other matters after I arrive.
So the part where it's in 28, everyone ought to examine themselves before they eat of the bread and drink of the cup.
Mm-hmm.
So really evaluating, like, have I checked on all of my brothers and sisters? Are all my brothers and sisters okay? Are they in need of anything? Have I helped everyone in the body that needs helped? Like, have I cared for all of my brothers and sisters? I really feel like that's what Paul is saying there, and really examining, like,
what is your heart into? It's like, yeah, like, am I actually living this out? Am I, am I humbly walking out what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
Because if you're not, and if you're holding, if you're hating your brother, or if you're back here, because this wouldn't be just for communion. If they would have been devaluing the other parts of the body,
well, all
the
other
other
things.
believers and all these things. Yeah, there's so many stuff back here. There's so many things back here that they had been doing that they were not living as Christ. They had really fallen away in so many ways, and they weren't repentant of it. If you're repentant of something and you're still like working through that, I mean, you can be working on your righteousness and take communion and be, if your heart's in the right place. You don't have to be perfect to take communion.
Right. But if you're continually, intentionally living in sin, that's where he's talking about. And many among you are weak and sick because you're choosing to live in that sin.
Right.
And that's where he's saying that judgment came upon them because God put judgment upon them and caused them to get sick and weak, and a lot of them fell asleep.
Yeah. And so, God's like trying to wake them up. Like, hey, there's something really big happening here.
Yeah, this is important.
Right. And they must not have gotten the message because Paul actually had to write it out for them to see, like, this is what's happening, and this is what God's doing, and this is what you've done to bring this upon yourselves.
Yeah. So at the end they're saying, my brothers and sisters, gather and eat before you come so no one's hungry. Again, take care of the body. Take care of the body. Take care of everyone that's a part of the church. So that we don't have to worry about the judgment of resulting of that.
Right.
And Paul wrapping it up with saying, and I will come. And we will discuss this further.
Right.
Because this is an important section that he finds that is very important to not take lightly.
Right. And we shouldn't either. When we gather together, this should be the main thing. Yeah. And we should make sure our heart's in the right place and that we're doing what needs to be done in order to make sure that our gatherings, our services, when we do this, that this is our focus. This is why we gather.
Yeah. Yeah.
As one body in Christ to commune with God. This is the important thing.
Yeah. Not to make it about any of the light and fluffy things or the flashing lights or the great music or the
good
sounds.
Feelings.
Yeah.
It's not about us.
Yeah.
It's about us as a whole being together and being with God. And I think if we would take these kind of things serious, like as we come together as the church, like we would see God moving. It wouldn't just be a program or a service that we just come in and out of. It would be amazing. Things would happen.
I think about in that, so when you're coming to communion, like making sure, like, okay, I feel like I've seen someone here a few times this last few services. Why are they not here? And thinking, so then to reach out to that part of the body, like that person saying, everything okay?
Yeah.
Everything okay? I saying you weren't there today.
Right.
Versus noticing, like, oh, or not even noticing.
Yeah.
Not even noticing if your brother and sister aren't there anymore.
Well, and in these parts back here, when they were doing this, like they weren't just getting together once or twice a week. They were living life together. they were connecting with each other like on a daily basis. So they would have known all of the needs of the community. They would have known, which makes it even worse that these people were treating the poor people that way.
Yeah.
Because if they had the example, they weren't that far from the very first church, the very first gathering of believers. They would have known how important it was to actually be working this out, because Paul would have been able to see how that was working and then came and like taught this to them.
Right. So yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, as believers, it's like, if we haven't seen anybody for a long time, that's a big red flag. We need to be getting in touch with them.
Care for the body.
Right. And trying to make time like during the week to actually connect with each other, not just wait
on Sundays.
On Sunday. And if we don't see them that Sunday, then, well, maybe they'll be there next week.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a long time. I mean, we all know, like, if you go 2 or 3 weeks and you're really struggling, that's a long time. Yeah. Even though, to the other person, it might just be, well, they weren't here this week.
Yeah, but they could be really battling with something.
Right. And so we need to be reaching out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Care for the body.
Exactly.
Which we're going to go into with chapter 12.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I think we're done with chapter 11.
Stay tuned for chapter 12.
Yep.